Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio this morning, and I'm glad that you've joined us. We've got a couple comments from viewers that we're going to start the morning off with, and then we have a lot of breaking stories, some New York issues. Obviously, Doge is always in the news. That's a pretty standard topic. So we'll be talking about all those. First off, this is from a viewer that came in yesterday after the program. Hi, Frank. On the topic of thanking people, I would like to praise Shannon Carey from the Office of the Aging in Corning. She works so hard to help our elderly. She is kind and caring, and the most important thing is she's in the everyday working for the everyday working for the most vulnerable. So thank you, Shannon Carey. Well, that's a nice message from a viewer. If you are new to the program, you can reach out at any time to that number on the bottom of the screen, either text or leave a voicemail. Comment from a viewer yesterday. Regarding the recent vandalism and terrorism of Nick Langworthy's field offices, see how intolerant and manically angry liberal Democrats are when the power is no longer theirs. These actions are their new platform and only make the general public despise them more. In reference to what that viewer was saying, Congressman Langworthy released this statement. Last week, an act of vandalism was committed at my Jamestown office, designed to jam the door and make it impossible for us to enter our office space. At the time of the incident, it was public knowledge that I was off-site holding a press conference and the office would be empty. We immediately notified local law enforcement who are conducting an investigation. This disturbing incident comes on the heels of an envelope with white powder that was recently sent to another one of my district offices. Let me be clear. These actions are crimes and have no place in our political discourse. It is completely unacceptable for my hardworking staff and the citizens who rely on our office for federal assistance to be disrupted by the criminal activity of deranged zealots. It will not be tolerated, and I will urge prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. And thank you for the statement from the congressman. But to add on to that, there is a lot of you. We've seen them at the town hall meetings, on the national news. There is a lot of anger at Elon Musk, which we're going to get to later on because it's kind of interesting, the anger at Elon Musk and Doge for entering IRS. You've heard me talk about that a lot, where I don't know why you hang your hat on the IRS as if that scares people. But we learned yesterday that the IRS admitted that an anti-Trump taxman, bureaucrat at the IRS, leaked data of 405,000 filers. So where is the real fear? Is it Elon Musk, or should it be placed at these nameless, faceless bureaucrats' feet? Because we're seeing it right now. Resignations, which is fine, but resignations and this idea that they know better how to run the government, these unelected bureaucrats, than the man who won in a landslide, President of the United States. But we talk about the violence, the threats, the intimidation, but apparently it's not enough, because according to Semaphore, Hakeem Jeffries is taking heat as the Democrat base wants more of an anti-Trump fight. So Hakeem Jeffries is not doing enough. Even with some of the rhetoric that we've seen from him and other Democrats, talking about fighting in the street and things like that, that's not going far enough. Hakeem Jeffries is 3 seats away from the House majority. First, though, he must face a problem that's familiar to his Senate Democrat colleagues. He has no clear plan to answer activists clamoring for more of an anti-Trump fight. So they're not fighting enough, according to the Democrat base. Jeffries confronted the pushback during a stop on his book tour last week, just as Republicans started to feel public frustration with the layoffs and cuts imposed by Doge, and after local progressive protesters disrupted Jeffries during that Chicago appearance. Several House Democrat staffers privately grumbled that their leader should be more hands-on. Asked if Jeffries is feeling heat from the left, Pramila Jayapal, the Congressional Progressive Caucus chair, said, "Oh, I think so," that he's feeling the heat. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has drawn his fair share of progressive anger since becoming Democratic leader across the Capitol. And we've talked about that even more extensively than we have with Hakeem Jeffries. A lot of people are saying that Chuck Schumer is out of touch, that he's operating kind of the way things used to be done. And it kind of grew to a peak when he was at that protest against Elon, and he said, we will win, and this coming just a few short months after they lost in a landslide. People saying it was out of touch. It was now, and then when I say people, Democrats specifically, saying that it was not nearly far enough and really tone deaf. Now, Democrats defending Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, even to the point of hitting the party's base for being counterproductive. Representative James Clyburn likened progressives' recent outcry to the defund the police messaging that damaged the Democrat brand back in 2020. He said, that's the way they do it. They don't focus on the problem. Now, Hakeem Jeffries' staff did not respond to a comment from Semaphore. And we don't need to go back to all the polling numbers and the like, but Jayapal said, well, the polling numbers always take a while to come through. People want to see Democrats fighting. And I think we are showing what it looks like to fight back. So again, Jeffries has shaped a, quote, blueprint for fighting back, according to Ilhan Omar. But to that viewer's point about when we start to see the violence and the anger, many in the Democrat base saying it does not go far enough, so keep that in mind. Also, in breaking news late yesterday, Trump's budget bill with a $4.5 trillion in tax cuts survived the House vote. It got a little bit hairy there for a while. The House of Representatives has adopted a resolution that will eventually become a massive multi-trillion-dollar bill full of President Donald Trump's priorities on the border, defense, energy, and taxes. And a major victory for House GOP leaders, Speaker Johnson. The resolution passed in a 217 to 215 vote. All Democrats, of course, voted against the measure, along with one lone Republican. They call him here a rebel. I'll let you be the judge, but that was Representative Thomas Massey from Kentucky. He was concerned about its effect on the national debt. The next step is now for the relevant House committees to meet and build their own proposals, which will eventually be returned into the framework and negotiated in a compromise deal with the Senate. It was a dramatic scene in the House chambers on Monday night as Republican leaders delayed formally ending a vote for roughly 45 minutes as they worked to convince conservative fiscal hawks to support the legislation. Impatient Democrats called out loud for the vote to be closed as Republicans huddled in varied groups. Two holdouts on the House floor said that President Donald Trump got involved at one point. Speaking to one of the holdouts, Representative Victoria Spartz, by phone, Representative Tim Burchett and Warren Davidson could be seen on the phone at some point on the House floor as well. So the budget resolution passes minutes after the original vote was canceled. It's not always pretty, folks. You don't always want to see the sausage made, right? But after a series of ups and downs and highs and lows, House Republicans got a pretty big victory yesterday. The anticipated budget resolution vote almost didn't happen, and then when it appeared it would take place, it was canceled. The cancellation was short-term, and House Republicans received a victory they'll surely savor as long as they can, which, though, may not be for that long because there are some, to use Fox News' term, rebels out there, some people that are concerned. But it was a victory for Speaker Johnson, Majority Leader Steve Scalise, Majority Whip Tom Emmer, and Conference Chair Lisa McClain, who used Trump's support of the resolution and Trump's direct influence to ensure its passage. Congressman, I guess we're going to have a lot of statements from the congressman this morning, but I thought it was worth highlighting what he had to say about the passage of the House budget resolution. We go to that now. Oops, got a double layer there. This budget resolution reverses the out-of-control spending of the last administration. With a national debt of $36 trillion and counting, it's past time to restore fiscal sanity to our budget process. The resolution directs congressional committees to do just that. In passing this resolution, House Republicans have taken a first step towards enacting President Trump's agenda of providing tax relief for working families and small businesses, unleashing American energy, cutting wasteful spending, and securing our borders. So that's a bit of breaking news this morning. But when we come back, boy, do I have an update for you. As we talked with Sheriff Allard yesterday about upcoming elections, as we've talked a lot about how important it is to get involved. Petition season just beginning. Yesterday was the first day that you could get signatures. It is very important. And I've got an exciting interview. I believe it's on tomorrow's program where we're going to find out about how Chemung County is doing it to get out the people to take out petitions, to get people active. We're going to learn about that tomorrow. That's for Chemung County. But I mention this because we talk about how important it is to get involved locally, whether that means running for town council, town supervisor, city council, mayor, whatever the case may be, or legislator, or if it's just helping by taking out the petitions or just getting involved with campaigns. It's so important. And at the end of the day on this program, we hope that we'll have as many guests on, when I say at the end of the day, I mean November or even the primaries, depending, that we'll get as many interviews as we possibly can so you'll know who you're voting for, why you're voting for them. We know in the media market the way it is today, or the media landscape, I should say, it's sometimes difficult to find out about your candidate, especially at such local levels. We're going to try to do our best to get those guests on. So as always, I encourage you to send in suggestions for guests. But the reason I'm going on this long-winded tangent before we go on a break is because I have an example of why it's so important to know who you are voting for, and that is the world's super mayor. We have a very important update for you on Tiffany Henyard when we come back. It'll just be a quick little bit because we've got a lot to talk about. It actually ties in with our New York State issues, why it is so important to know who you are voting for. And we point to Tiffany Henyard so often because it has been a prime example of being voted in for one reason, or maybe because the voters didn't know. She gets in there. A lot of financial issues after she gets in there, a lot of heavy spending on things like posters with her face on it to welcome people into the city. It's been quite a wild ride, and I've got a quick update for you on that when we come back, so stay with us. We're just getting warmed up here on Frankly Speaking. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you for all the comments, all the waves. Mark, yours is going to tie in just a second with a topic, that exact topic, so I'll get to yours in a second. I'm not ignoring it. But thank you and good morning. So a quick update on Dolton, Illinois Mayor Tiffany Henyard, the world's super mayor. Some call her the Dolton dictator. Well, yesterday morning, after this program, I saw, and I didn't realize the time frame on this, or I would have been able to highlight it on yesterday's show. It was primary day for them, and she made a huge prediction that there was no competition in her mind in the primary. She was going to win this in a landslide. She actually said, "I am confident that I will have a landslide this evening. Our residents do love me despite fake news not showing the good that I do in the community, because I do a ton of good. You painted me as bad news for 4 years. Please do your research. Judge me on my work because my work speaks for itself. Ignore the mess and drama because that is just a distraction." Well, ironically, her saying do your research, we have pointed to her career as an example of why you need to know who you're voting for when you go to the booth, whether it's the primaries or whether it's a general election. And this, though not local to us, local to the folks in Dolton, Illinois. So how did the primary go? Tiffany Henyard projected to lose the primary in a landslide, maybe due to the various scandals and allegations of corruption. But the embattled mayor, who had predicted that she would win in a landslide, came in quite the opposite. Challenger Jason House overwhelmingly defeated Henyard, securing 3,896 votes to Henyard's 536. And the sad thing is, many of those 536 are probably people that just recognize the name, and that's why I say it's so important to go in and know who you are voting for. So I'm not going to go into all the specifics because it doesn't necessarily pertain to us only in the fact that it's a public service announcement. But if you recall, former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot was hired to investigate Henyard, which you can talk about kind of the irony in that. But it revealed the village's general fund had diminished from $5.6 million surplus when Henyard took over as mayor, $5.6 million surplus, to a $3.6 million deficit just 2 years later, from 2022 to 2024. There's questionable credit card purchases, if you call, Amazon purchases, no financial accountability. As a matter of fact, when they tried to do an audit, she vetoed that audit, which normally raises red flags. And also, of course, there was that fight at the town hall meeting. The list goes on and on. So just a couple things to keep in mind about this. It sounds as if she did, even though she predicted that she would win in a landslide, sounds like she did accept the results. She talked with WGN, the world's greatest network. I think it was World Greatest Newspaper originally, right? And then World Greatest Network. Said, "The people have spoken. God must have a different plan for me," she said, accepting her defeat. And why I raise, not issue with that, but why that piques my interest. How's that? God has different plans for me. Well, before the results were in, they asked her if she would accept Tuesday night's election results no matter what. And she said, yes. And they said, well, if you lose, what would you do next? She said, I might run for something bigger. You never know. Well, she does have a pretty impressive resume if she wants to run on the Democrat ticket somewhere else. So Tiffany Henyard has been, and I know this, she's become such a staple of talking about on this program to promote getting to know your local candidates, but it ties in with New York State issues. How? Because again, knowing who you're voting for. So this is when I bring up Mark's comment. Mark writes in, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. I saw an ad where Hochul is really going against Doge, saying New York loves federal workers and has several openings and come be a part of our family. Just ridiculous. Yes, she has an initiative that they're calling, or that she says the Fed government is firing, we're hiring in the commercial. So at a time when we have a $250 billion budget, we are spending way too much money in the state. People are leaving in droves. Instead of going the Doge route, like I understand Florida is, they're starting their own Doge campaign there. I'm sure many others. Instead of doing that and saying, yeah, maybe we should cut back, she's saying, hey, you know all those people you cut at the federal level to save money for the federal government and the federal and the taxpayers? We are going to put them on the payroll and add to our budget. I'm not going to go through this, but each of these stories, when you talk about layoffs, they always interview somebody that was laid off, and you don't want to see anybody lose their job, but we just got too big at the federal level, and that's why Doge is getting in there to clean house like you would at any kind of company at some point when you're hemorrhaging money. But in the midst of all this, New York's governor is hoping to capitalize on a growing pool of possible hires. As I said in the new commercial, the Fed government is firing, we're hiring. So the initiative is entitled, You're Hired. And this is in response to Doge. This is another example of Governor Hochul, if I'm being honest, trying to perhaps act as if she is more important at the national scene than she is, trying to get that national attention. She just doesn't have it. I know I keep saying not ready for prime time. I can't think of another way to put it. She's just not to that level. But she says in the ad, the federal government might say you're fired, but here in New York, we say you're hired. In fact, we love federal workers. Whatever your skills, we value public service. Check out potential jobs. And then they give the website, come join our New York State family. So obviously this could be one way she's trying to entice people back to the state, but in this case, federal workers specifically. And isn't some of the point of the layoffs that there isn't that skill set, perhaps? That was the whole reasoning behind the email. That are some of these people even working? We've got the at-home workers that didn't want to go back in the office, these type of things. But if you were fired, we in New York State say you're hired, according to Hochul. And that ties in, all of this is, it's the thread that goes through all of it is know who you're voting for. Right now, if you look at the polls, Hochul leads Mike Lawler. Now, many people think Congressman Mike Lawler, he has not declared, but thinks he may run for governor. He is down by just 8 percentage points to Kathy Hochul as of right now. That's with kind of a low name recognition, not formally announcing. That's very interesting. Hochul does have a majority of support among Democrat voters in a hypothetical primary matchup featuring her former, I guess still technically Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado and Congressman Richie Torres, which surprises me. Delgado ahead of Richie Torres. She has 52%, Delgado 15%, and Torres 12%. That kind of intrigued me. I think Richie Torres could do better than that as it nears primary in 2026. But having said that, Mike Lawler within scratching distance of Governor Hochul, even though he has not declared. I think that's a positive story. That's a good story to mention this morning. I also mention it because of this poll. It also mentions Andrew Cuomo, and that's what we're going to talk about when we come back, that he is the favorite in the mayoral race. Andrew Cuomo leads the field with 35% first-round support among New York City Democrat voters, followed by Scott Stringer with 17%, and then Mayor Eric Adams with 15%. So there's my hint at what we're going to talk about next. A quick couple of New York updates. We're going to talk more about Governor Hochul, but also, and I say just so you don't get mad, because I know we have people that don't want me talking about Cuomo all that much. But we do have to give you a couple updates and breaking news on what is being said about his potential run for mayor. Then we're going to talk about the prison strike, your thoughts on that. We had that nice piece, if you will, from Assemblyman Phil Palmisano yesterday. And then, of course, our conversation with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, which it was nice to hear his thoughts on the corrections officers strike. Your opinion on what is going on Hochul's handling of the matter. All that and much more. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Give them a call today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street. And according to a couple comments from viewers, how about saying that Hochul is not qualified, that she doesn't have the experience or common sense to govern at the state level? Or how about saying that she isn't qualified to run a restaurant? Just trying to help, or any business for that matter, the viewer said. I understand what you're saying. That's not really my point that I'm trying to get to. It's not about the governing. I agree with you that when it comes to the pure day-to-day politics, she's not doing a good job, to put it lightly. She was not qualified for that position. And she has had, we brought up that piece from the New York Post yesterday saying that she bungled this with the corrections officers like so many other things throughout her career. But I'm saying it on the political sense, not the governing sense. And that's why I use not ready for prime time. She wants to be a power broker, a kingmaker. She wants to be the star like Cuomo was during COVID and even before. I mean, New York is such a major media market that Cuomo got a lot of attention. And she tries with her speeches or coming up with these slogans or whatever the case may be, and it just always falls flat. For instance, look at when she said that if you vote Republican, you're anti-American and anti-women. That should have gotten national attention because that came off the heels of Biden calling Trump supporters garbage, and there were some other instances. Mark Cuban had said something, or there wasn't intelligent women around Trump, something like that. So there was getting a lot of attention about this negativity coming from the Democrat Party. Hochul saying that should have been splashed on the pages of the paper, on the nightly news, and it really wasn't because she's not looked at as relevant or a relevant power player. Yes, she is the governor of New York, which has a lot of power. I'm not saying that. She just doesn't have maybe the charisma or the political skill set to be that next level. is what I'm trying to say. But I appreciate your suggestions. I'm just, and I don't disagree. I'm just saying I'm not doing the best job of describing why I keep saying it the way I do. But Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, will make his final decision as soon as Thursday, according to Page 6, the gossip column at the New York Post. The former governor will know for sure by Friday after he has a formal sit-down with his 3 daughters on Thursday evening. The New York Times is saying that he is going to announce this weekend. Now, originally we thought it would be around March 4th, which is not that far off. Would that actually be, that wouldn't be the 4th. No, the 4th would be, oh, that makes sense. The 4th is Tuesday, and originally his campaign had sent out a message, or not campaign, his people sent out a message almost like a save the date for a fundraiser, and many people thought that's when he would announce. But 3 years after resigning, in a cloud of scandal, not just the scandals when it involves harassment and the like, and never mind, it cost us how many millions of dollars, $28 million, to defend him against those harassment charges, where the person that accused him of harassing finally said, I just can't do this anymore. I can't compete with the taxpayers' dollars. He asked for there to be a gag order so that they would not keep mentioning how much it was going to cost you and I, the taxpayer. But anyway, we always, and we never want to forget, and we won't here on this program, the nursing home scandal. They may not bring it up in every article, but we are going to bring it up because it led to the needless deaths of, thousands of New York residents who died not by any means of their own. They were in a nursing home, the most vulnerable amongst us, in a nursing home, and he put COVID positive patients in that nursing home with the most vulnerable population. It was a tragedy. It still gets many people, myself included, and it should, our blood boiling when we see him making moves to run, because to me it disqualifies him from any elected office. But it looks as if he is going to make the announcement this weekend to run for mayor of New York City. And as I mentioned earlier, he is the clear front runner as of right now. So I know it's not up to us in upstate New York or our Pennsylvania viewers, but it's up to the people of New York City. Will they, and if they do vote him in as mayor, I think it shows you a little bit about what we as Republicans are dealing with throughout the state when we talk about gubernatorial races and the like. Michael Goodwin says that Andrew Cuomo's biggest challenge in a mayoral run will be getting past himself and facing his many lows head on. Maybe he'll run under a banner of no remorse, no regrets. Yeah, because he doesn't, he wasn't truthful about the nursing home deaths. He tried to cover it up. He knew what that would mean. As Goodwin said, Cuomo's decision during the height of COVID, especially his infamous health department order requiring nursing homes to take infected hospital patients, it remains indefensible. Yet he refuses to accept responsibility for any of the resulting deaths and still claims his order merely followed federal guidelines. That's not true, and his attempt to hide the number of actual nursing home deaths while he reaped $5 million for a book deal remains scandalous. Now, I'm not going to go. He can't show humility. He can't seek forgiveness because of the arrogant nature. And that's just his history. That is who he is. And it wasn't just Republicans saying it when he was governor. It was his fellow Democrats. So, can he overcome the scandals? Now, again, as I mentioned, it's important to know who you are voting for, and that also goes for Hochul. And we're going to talk about the prison strike just quickly when we come back. And we've got a lot to get to at the federal level. We're just going through a lot this morning. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in, and please stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us our beautiful view of historic Market Street. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. We're getting great comments in this morning. Let's get right to them. Morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Regarding Cuomo and the nursing home fiasco, At that time, it was clearly known that COVID was highly contagious and so on. So given this, could some level of murder be relevant? What do you think? Well, thank you for that comment. I know there was talks at the time of charges, and rightfully so. There's a lot of people. I think of Janice Dean from Fox News who lost her in-laws, and they couldn't see them at the end because, remember, nursing homes were closed off for guests, except for when then Governor Cuomo put COVID positive patients in the nursing homes, and has never shown remorse, has never apologized. If anything, he's kind of doubled down. Has not been truthful the whole time. So I know there was people that had talked about that. I don't think anything will come of it, but I mean, you raise a very good point. Comment from a different viewer. Good Wednesday morning, Frank. Well, hey, good Wednesday morning. We need to be done. Department of New York efficiency. DONE. I like it. It works. Department of New York efficiency. Think of the slogan. We're done with Hochul. I like it. That is a beautiful slogan and a beautiful name for a group. Department of New York efficiency. But we're doing quite the opposite because we're taking the federal employees that were fired and we're saying, hey, come along here, get on the New York State taxpayer roll. Mark believes that we should be able to vote for mayor of New York City, as we support New York City, and we support it a lot because New York City can't support itself. That'd be great if we could. I don't see that happening. It's such a weird dynamic between the city and upstate, isn't it? Comment from a different viewer. So New York has 2,000 unfilled state jobs. I have not noticed a difference in my life. Sometimes you can surprise yourself how much you can do with less. Agreed. And that's what's so important with Doge. You know, we always used to joke on radio, and I'm sure we mentioned here when they would talk about a government shutdown, that only certain employees could come in. It was only the essential employees. And the joke always was, well, why do we need non-essential employees then? That's to your point. If we don't need those 2,000, it's not as if anything that we can see day to day has changed all that much in New York. But this is, again, that idea that I'm talking about where Hochul wants to be on the national scene. She thinks this will get the attention because she's going after Trump. But remember, we really need the federal, if you look at her budget, we really need the federal government to help us. So I'm not sure why she is, quote unquote, poking the bear, but she is indeed doing so. All right, comment from Ken. Good morning, Ken. On November 6th last year, I texted you, and one of the things I forecast was that Democrats will cause chaos and then blame Trump on creating it. On Monday, the legacy media word of the day was Trump creating chaos. I may not be the smartest political analyst, but with all the chaos that the Democrats are creating over Doge, there must have been a huge majority of Democrats and unelected bureaucrats that have been stealing money from the American people. I hope Pam Bondi works to uncover their corruption and hold them to the letter of the law. Thank you, Ken. And thank you for, as they say in Washington, for showing your receipt and dating it when you text me on November 6th. Thank you for that. Well, we know just at pure face value that government employees overwhelmingly lean left. The bureaucrats vote Democrat. We had that piece for you probably a month ago, maybe now. Maybe now. It can't be that long because Trump just got sworn in. But it was a little while ago about how they lean very heavy Democrat. So I think that's why there's so much anger. Well, one of the reasons why there's so much anger. I do think it's kind of fascinating to watch how clear Democrats have made it about their, I don't know, their love or their for bureaucrats. I mean, there's no hiding it at this point that they want a bigger government, right? So it's been kind of interesting to watch that. To your point, yes, chaos has been the word of the day for a few days now, hasn't it? I know you predicted it. We've talked about it numerous times that there would be this idea that they create the chaos and then blame Trump for the chaos. We specifically saw with the email story that it was pretty crystal clear. I know I keep beating a dead horse here. I just don't see. I know why the media tried to make it an issue, and I know why Democrats try to make it an issue, because they want to pretend it's chaos. If you got an email from your boss that said, "What did you do last week?" To me, you may be taken aback and wonder if your job's in jeopardy, which is probably what's happening here. But at the same time, don't you just respond? Why was there all the what should they do? What are they going to do? To me, when you take a job and you have a boss, a superior, and they ask you for a performance review, it doesn't seem as shocking to me as apparently it does to people that are surrounded, either they are in government or surrounded by government employees. I still don't understand why that was such a shocking thing to ask. But yes, thank you for your comment, Ken. Chaos is the word of the last 10 years. Hochul faces an untenable prison strike amidst political challenges, writes New York State of Politics. Already dealing with multiple political firestorms across the state, Governor Hochul is now facing another major challenge with corrections officers on strike at upstate prisons. Quote, "We want to find out what the issue is because the individuals who walked out in an unsanctioned strike, unapproved by the union, have yet to tell us the issues," she told reporters during a press conference yesterday. Let me ask, maybe it's not fair because you watch this program and we've been talking about HALT and we've been talking about corrections officers for so long. But do you really not know, Governor Hochul, what the issues the corrections officers have? Not only have they made it crystal clear, don't you remember they even released a list of demands at one point? So to suggest they've been standing in the freezing cold for a week and a half around burning barrels in front of these prisons and haven't spoke to anybody, haven't let people know why they're out there, is laughable coming from Governor Hochul. Let me reread that. "We want to find out what the issue is because the individuals who walked out in an unsanctioned strike, unapproved by the union, have yet to tell us the issues." Let that sink in for a moment. Because if you don't know what the issues are, then you're not paying attention. Then you're willfully ignoring them. They're protesting what they've described as unsafe conditions, including violence against staff and inmates, illegal flows of drugs, and mandatory overtime. Hochul said, "I understand there's a lot of frustration about the long hours. I understand that. We need more of you on the job. I get that. But we have a situation right now which is absolutely untenable." Although state labor law bars public employees from striking, officers at 38 out of 42 facilities outside of the 5 bureaus have walked off the job, prompting legal action from the state attorney general's office against at least 330 officers. And that's what's sad. And we talked about it with Sheriff Allard yesterday, where he said it's an act of desperation, meaning they had no choice at this point. It had gone too far. Do you think they wanted to start protesting on last week, which was one of the coldest weeks of the year? As so many have said, I don't care if I lose my job at this point. We have to see change. 9 out of 10 correctional officers are on this illegal strike, and we will get to every single one of them until they return to work. Wow. 9 out of 10 correctional officers are on this illegal strike. That's according to Marcos Gonzalez Soler, the state's Deputy Secretary for Public Safety. Now, facility visitations have been suspended in a number of prisons. The total inmate population stands at over 33,000, according to the state. We also repealed a staffing memo that would have been viewed as controversial. We also suspended portions of the HALT Act, which require a certain amount of time out and other facilities and other activities that we do not have the staffing to implement, Hochul said at the time. When it boils down to it, the HALT Act, the numbers speak for itself, how disastrous it's been for corrections officers and inmate assault as well. So to suggest that she doesn't know what the issues are. As a matter of fact, the New York Public Employees Federation president said yesterday, quote, "I understand why," end quote, "prison workers are striking." So I understand why. And I think anybody, well, we'll get to one more point on this because I'm running late, and then I see a lot of comments coming in. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horsets. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. We're receiving so many great comments this morning. I can't thank you enough. Keep them coming in. Let's go right to them. Good morning. Hey, good morning. I look at the federal job openings in our great state. One that caught my interest was the job of governor assistant, federal director. It said if you have alleged covert ties to the Chinese Communist Party and you have the ability to hide ill-gotten money in offshore accounts, allegedly, and funnel those funds back to the Democrat Party, and you have Trump derangement syndrome, we have a job for you. Yeah, not a lot known about that aid to Governor Hochul and Governor Cuomo before Hochul. So I see what you mean. Maybe that is one of the job positions that's open that Hochul is looking for a federal employee to take care of. Comment from a different viewer. Remember, Cuomo threw out Samaritan's Purse from New York City. He also refused to use the medical ship Trump sent. The list goes on and on. Yeah, his handling, he gave COVID tests when they were so rare and so scarce. He gave COVID tests to his family members, jumping them ahead of the line. He threatened to take away ventilators from upstate areas, hospitals. So yeah, I mean, the list really does, you're exactly right. The list does go on and on. And that's why we here on the program aren't going to let people forget it. We're going to bring it up when he's running for mayor or whatever he wants to go to next. That there were so many deaths that should not have happened at his hand, because of his hand, and specifically in the nursing homes. Mark writes in, isn't what Cuomo did to the nursing home residents involuntary manslaughter? He should be prosecuted, and the people that were affected by family members dying should stand up against him. Well, let me say, family members have. I know there was lawsuits, but I also know just people like Janice Dean and others that have been so vocal about this, and I know will definitely continue to be vocal if he does decide to run for mayor. So they have done the best they can in what is an uphill battle because of the power Cuomo had, the way he has clearly shown he has no problem distorting what happened, lying about what happened. It was even stated in Congress by Democrat, after he had that hearing in Congress, by Democrats, that they did not believe he was being truthful. Comment from a different viewer. Maybe there should be more effort to use the 2,000 positions to hire guards. Yeah, maybe she should focus more on hiring guards. But why? Here's the problem. I know there's a shortage of corrections officers, but when we learn what's going on with those numbers because of the HALD Act, why would, and I wish people would, don't get me wrong, but why would someone set out to become a corrections officer anymore? We talked about it with Phil Palmisano, and he's given some ideas of what he believes could really help recruitment measures. But right now we hear the staggering numbers with Hull and what that has done to the safety or lack thereof inside prison, right? And I don't have those numbers right in front of me. Here it is. Since 2021, the HALD Act was put into effect in 2022. Or 2020, I believe. 2022, April 2022, the HALD Act was put in. Assaults inmate on inmate have increased 169%, but assaults on inmate on staff increased 76% to 2,072. So you've got that. You've got the long overtime hours, being forced to work overtime to up to 24 hours. That's going to be a hard recruitment, and that's because of the decisions that Governor Hochul has made. Comment from and those in Albany. We can't let them off the hook. Comment from a different viewer. Hochul is a liar if she claims ignorance. And that's in reference to her saying, we don't know what the issue is with the corrections officers. Because wasn't it about 6 or 7 days ago that she said something about sending in the National Guard? Yes, I believe they have at certain locations, if I'm not mistaken. Do I have time for that? No, let's take one short break. We'll read some more of your comments to wrap up hour number one, and we'll wrap up our discussion on the corrections officers here in just a moment with Joe Sempolinski with a statement that he released yesterday. We had that great section of a press conference, if you will, with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. So I want to have Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski say a few words on this that I have to read, but about what is going on at the prison. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horset. It looks a little foggy out there this morning. Thank you to Boss Security. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A comment from Ken. Hochul's comments have confirmed the suspicion that she is just a mouthpiece for her Democrat handlers. She truly doesn't know what the issues are. She has been told what to say in reaction to the guard strike, but her handlers never told her why they were striking. What other explanation could there be? Thank you, Ken. Joe Sempolinski, former congressman and current assemblyman, said the HALT Act puts the lives of corrections officers, prison staff, and inmates in danger every single day. The HALT Act eliminated one of the few tools corrections officers had to maintain safety and order. Since the HALT Act passed, inmate-on-inmate assaults are up 169%, and inmate-on-staff assaults are up 76%. There are few jobs that are more difficult and more dangerous than that of a corrections officer. The HALT Act has made the job almost impossible to do and has made our prisons dangerous for corrections officers and the inmates. New York is in crisis, and it's a crisis caused by one-party rule in Albany. I'm calling on the governor to stand up for the rule of law, stand up for crime victims instead of criminals, and do the right thing and repeal the HALT Act. Thank you to Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski, former congressman. He is exactly right. The one-party rule that has led to this. Also, it's interesting because we've talked about it, that there's bail reform that tied the hands of police officers and coddled criminals, and you have the HALT Act, which does the same in prisons. That's decisions being made by people that want to virtue signal, that care more in Albany, who care more about criminals and their quote-unquote well-being than they do the corrections officers and the police officers who put their life on the line daily. All right. I see some more comments coming in. Our number one is in the books. Hard to believe. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the waves. Keep them coming in. We are going to change up the topic. We are going to go to Doge and federal level issues, but at any point you can comment on anything that you would like. You can comment on the local issues, the corrections officers. I'd love to hear from you because we've still got a lot to cover this morning. It doesn't mean we're not going to have some callbacks to some of the things we already talked about, like the next, kind of the first step in the budget for the House with that big win for Mike Johnson and Republican leadership. We had that this morning. I guess if you want to talk, if you just joining us, Tiffany Henyard, the world super mayor, did lose her primary in a landslide yesterday. So now it looks like maybe the voters did learn about who they were voting for. And she's always kind of the person that we focus on, not because she's local to us, but because it's a PSA, public service announcement, to say this is why you need to know who you are voting for at the local level. And this is a big year local level wise. So petition season has started with signatures able to be collected as of yesterday. So if you want to get involved, it's not too late. You can contact me and I can get you in touch with who you need to talk to, whether that is Chemung County or Steuben County. I'll do my best to help you all that I can. And Chemung has a really neat program that they're offering, not program, but kind of a party, if you will, to kick off the petition season. And we'll be talking with Colton Hillman from the Chemung County GOP on the program tomorrow. So make sure you tune in for that if you want to learn more about the petition process. All right, I'm running late now. Keep those comments coming in. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking with our number two after this. All right, I know I'm reading all these comments. Sorry, folks. Here, we got to do this. Our number two of Frankly Speaking. Thank you for joining us. I love when we get so many comments in that I get distracted trying to read them all. Thank you for that. We're going to get to those in just a moment. But as I said, it is our number two of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and we're having a blast this morning. Okay. Comments from viewers. They need to make the guard job extremely attractive. First, by eliminating the HALT Act and giving the power to run the prisons back to the guards. Thank you. A couple things that Assemblyman Palmisano, during our interview last Friday, had mentioned as well an increase in pay and benefits, recruitment and retention bonuses. There was that death gamble legislation that if you worked longer, then your retirement, like if you have 20 years when you can retire, if you went longer and heaven forbid something happens to you, that your family would receive your pension, because right now that is not the case. As a matter of fact, they passed a bill that would do that twice, and Governor Hochul has vetoed it twice. So those are some other options as well. Comment from a different viewer. Ukraine has agreed to a mineral rights deal with the U.S. that President Trump said would be finalized on Friday in a White House signing ceremony with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Yeah, I saw a little bit about that. We're going to get to that. Some more information on that a little bit later on. That is a relatively breaking news story. So some of it is still unfolding. And that's why I'm so glad viewers do this when they send me something that is breaking, because I try to do research during commercial breaks, but I'm also trying to read your comments. That is not in any way, shape, or form a complaint. That is just a matter of fact. So I sometimes miss the breaking story. So if you ever see a breaking story, please feel free to send it along, and thank you for that. Comment from a different viewer. Hochul is making a mountain out of a molehill. All she has to do is to repeal the HALT Act, but I think she is against doing so because of her pride. And by the way, New York State, the Democrats have been coddling criminals for years now. Yes, that is very true. But taking a step back, I don't even think it's her pride. I mean, that could be a part of it. I really think it's her fear of the extreme progressives in Albany. She does not have that fight against the left in her because... And Cuomo did a little bit, and that's not a positive or a negative. I'm just saying that Cuomo, that's something that he had. He was willing to fight and was very vindictive. She isn't willing to fight. If you recall, and I mentioned it with the sheriff yesterday, when they were talking about kind of that involuntary confinement, meaning, if you had a mental health issue and they could get you the help that you need, essentially. She said, yes, we want to look at that because there's such a homelessness issue and a mental health issue in the state. And Carl Hasty said, no, we're probably not even going to talk about it. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. So I think she doesn't have the fight in her in Albany. She's scared of her own party because the party in Albany is so radical, and she is not as popular as past governors. She has that real fear there. So keep the comments coming in. Thank you. More than 1 million federal workers responded to Musk's Doge email demanding to know what they did last week. This coming in last night. More than 1 million federal staffers, fewer than half the government's workforce, has responded to Musk's demand to come up with 5 things they accomplished. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here, because if you recall, on Monday he said failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. He did walk that back. White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt told reporters, I can announce that we've had more than 1 million workers who have chosen to participate in this very simple task of, again, sending 5 bullet points to your direct supervisor or manager. And I know the media is portraying this as chaos, but I don't think, which is really interesting, it's just because the media doesn't like Trump, obviously. But the media knows about performance reviews. They're called ratings. They're called sitting around with your boss and doing an air check to make your show better. So they can't really be outraged by these performance reviews. And I think the American worker is not outraged either, as you may go through it on a regular basis, or it may be a once a year at the beginning or end of the year type review, but was not a huge ask. And even Musk saying the bar is really low. Just type some words and hit send. And it really came off the heels of President Trump saying that he wished Musk would be a little more aggressive. We don't need to go into the whole, what was it voluntary, was it not? I'm just giving you the stats that more than 1 million federal workers did respond to that email. Leavitt also stood by Musk's instructions, saying, I do 5 things in about 10 minutes, and all federal workers should be working at the same pace that President Trump is working and moving. We have a country to save, and we want this federal government to be responsive to the needs of the American people. Yeah, if you have to do a performance review in comparison to Trump, you're in some trouble. I think, and that's not just federal workers. That's, I think, all of us. But again, it's a low bar, and I just don't understand. Instead of the quote unquote chaos with what do we do, just send the email to your supervisor. It shouldn't be that difficult of a task, in my opinion. Now, Doge staffers, according to AP News, resign en masse to protest Musk's slashing of federal government. More than 20, so that's en masse, huh? Civil service employees resigned Tuesday from Doge, saying they were refusing to use their technical expertise to dismantle critical public service. Quote, we swore to serve the American people and uphold our oath to the Constitution across presidential administrations. However, it has become clear that we can no longer honor those commitments. Carolyn Levitt released a statement saying anyone who thinks protests, lawsuits, and lawfare will deter President Trump must have been sleeping under a rock for the past several years. President Trump will not be deterred from delivering on the promises he made to make our federal government more efficient and more accountable to the hardworking American taxpayer. Musk posted on X that the story was fake news and suggested that the staffers were Democrat political holdovers who would have been fired had they not resigned. And it kind of proves the point that we've been saying that in this case, they resigned, but there's a lot of bureaucrats who do believe that they are smarter than the American people and the voters, that know that they're more important than the president of the United States, even though they're unelected, nameless, faceless bureaucrats. They believe they have the power. And I'm not the one just saying this. If you recall, before Trump was sworn in, Politico, far left Politico, was saying, why don't you bureaucrats work behind the scenes to stop Trump's agenda? They admitting what Trump would call the deep state or the swamp, admitting that it existed, maybe unintentionally admitting it, but admitting it nonetheless. So you're going to have a lot of employees that resign or are found out that they are working against the Trump agenda that was voted in by the American people in a landslide. Right now, this is the optics that the media are going to play on. Former USAID employees will get 15 minutes to collect personal belongings from the shuttered D.C. office. They posted the specific instructions that former staffers must follow in order to retrieve their personal effects from the Ronald Reagan building in downtown Washington, D.C. The agency warned ex-employees that if they don't show up during the assigned time slot on Thursday or Friday, or designate a staffer to retrieve their belongings, their stuff will be stashed in a government warehouse and could be damaged or lost. And that's interesting. If you're one of the employees that don't work in Washington, that were working from home, could be across the country, you may not make it for your 15-minute time slot. All staff and their property will undergo magnetometer and x-ray machine screenings upon entry. Staff will then be escorted to their workspace where they will be permitted to collect their personal items. Staff will be given approximately 15 minutes to complete the retrieval and must be finished removing items within their time slot only. Staff with a significant amount of personal belongings to retrieve must be cognizant of time. However, flexibility may be granted in select circumstances with the approval of the Office of Security. They know that security guards or members of law enforcement will be present and warn former staffers not to bring prohibited items such as weapons with them for the pickup. Staff must bring their own boxes, bags, tape, and or other containers to remove their personal items. These items will not be provided. Staff will be permitted to remove personal items only and may not retrieve or remove any U.S. government-created documents, supplies, or other items that are property of the United States government. If staff are unable to retrieve their items and do not wish to have another staff member retrieve items in their absence, personal items will be packed by GSA and sent to a warehouse for collection at a later date and time. GSA cannot guarantee that personal items not claimed during this time will be free from damage or loss, but will take all precautionary measures to be safeguarded. Expect a lot of media coverage tomorrow and Friday of people carrying out boxes, of focus on the individuals. That's not good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying expect that to be a major story, as they will portray it as kind of a heartlessness of Musk or of Trump, depending on who they talk to. On Sunday, USAID moved to implement a reduction in force that will affect approximately 1,600 USAID personnel. Now, yesterday there was a piece, we didn't get to it, but at the New York Post, and they said that Trump, and I'm bringing it up because I'd love to get your opinion on it, the kind of the crux of their argument was that Trump needs to be careful with the layoffs, not because they're not important, but because he doesn't want to show a disdain for workers that could be bad for public relations. My argument is kind of what, how did Musk put it? The bureaucracy is kind of in the death throes, that they're going through the death throes of, of the major cuts in Washington. So I think the media is going to always portray this as heartless or focus on the worst case scenarios, because that's what the media does when it comes to a Trump administration or really any Republican administration. But it sounds as if Musk specifically is willing to kind of ride that storm. Now, Democrat Representative Adam Smith said on MSNBC, and boy, we do have a couple updates on MSNBC and some media updates as well. How am I doing on time? I'm running a little late. Let me get to that quote because I see some more comments coming in. I don't want to miss out on those. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. And we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Comment from a viewer. As far as the corrections officer situation, I worked at the Elmira Reformatory on construction before the HALT Act, and it was terrible. Giving some examples of them being vulgar and some of the disgusting things that they were involved in. I didn't even want to go in there daily, but had to. So the guards are correct. Comment from a different viewer asking about the behind-the-scenes bureaucrats. Are they compromised? Do they not like America? No, I don't think. There are some that believe that they are more intelligent, could better run the government than the people that were elected by the voters. And I would clarify, there are some, I'm sure, some great people that are bureaucrats and do hard work. I know there is. But that's not who Trump and Musk are going after. They're going after the ones that have found the gravy train, that have found a scenario where, for instance, they could work from home for years and became so accustomed to that they didn't want to keep their job if they had to go back to the office. You have people that don't always put the taxpayer interest first, and that's who they're going after. So there are government employees that are not bad people at all, of course. We know that. We're not saying that. What Trump and Musk are doing with Doge are going after the waste, fraud, and corruption. And going back to kind of the joking term, but the essential employees, and looking carefully at the non-essential employees and seeing if they're necessary. That's all. But Representative Adam Smith was on MSNBC. And he said, if we identify what Trump and Musk are doing as what it is, which is basically trying to smash the federal government so that they can have greater power and control, this has nothing to do with the efficiency and effectiveness. You line up 100 CEOs in the country and say, is this the way you run your business if you wanted to make it more efficient and effective? Absolutely zero would say yes. This is about Trump and Musk creating a situation where they have the power to do whatever they want to do, whenever they want to do it, without any checks on that power. Call it what it is and build support in the country against it. And then also sue, which we have been doing. Use the courts to block the illegal actions that they're taking. But this is a basic messaging campaign. We've got to get our message out aggressively so that we can get more people to agree with us. Republicans make two arguments for the idiocy of what they're doing with our federal workforce. One, we've got to be more efficient and more effective. As I just said, the way they're doing it is the exact opposite of that. And second, they give impassioned pleas about the debt and the deficit. My gosh, I know it's a little chaotic, but goodness, we have to get this under control because the debt and the deficit are just so bad. And today we're planning on voting for a budget resolution that is going to increase the debt by $2 trillion over the next decade. This is an absolute lie that Donald Trump is telling the American people. Call them out on that lie and begin to build support to push back. So you see that kind of rhetoric that we mentioned earlier, the pushback. Hakeem Jeffries, if you didn't join us in the first hour, Hakeem Jeffries getting a lot of kind of angry calls from Democrats that he's not doing enough to push that anti-Trump narrative like we see there from Representative Smith. Now, is that how you feel? Do you feel that they're not being efficient? Do you feel that, I mean, again, to use Musk's term, the kind of the death throes, it is going to be, like, to use the word chaotic and chaos. There is going to be some again, throws. I can't think of any other word when you have so many people cut. Because look at how many people Biden added. Going to that viewer's point about the 2,000 employees they're trying to hire in New York State. Well, if we don't notice they're not there, do we really need them? Can we maybe start cutting back? And that's what Doge is essentially saying, that maybe like the probationary employees, the reason why they're going after that, those were Biden hires. Not him specifically, but during his administration. So maybe it's worth looking at them and saying, they probably don't have our best interest or the MAGA agenda interest first. Now, one of the arguments that we've been hearing is how really sacred the IRS is. I didn't know that was going to be their messaging. It's probably not the messaging I would have taken. But the IRS is sacred, and oh my goodness, Doge is in the IRS, and I don't want them to have my information. I know this is a talking point that many people are using when they call their congressmen, call their senators, when they're protesting. I don't want Musk to have my social security number. Well, you may not want to have the IRS have your social security number. So if Musk is such a real threat, what about the threat from inside the IRS? The IRS has admitted that an anti-Trump tax person leaked data on 405,000 filers. A former Internal Revenue Service contractor who leaked President Trump's tax returns to two media outlets also disclosed information about more than 405,000 other tax filers. The agency revealed to the House Judiciary Committee earlier this month. The IRS previously said Charles Edward Littlejohn had exposed information on more than 70,000 people and businesses in 2019 and 2020 when he provided ProPublica and the New York Times with copies of Trump's tax returns. Littlejohn is serving a 5-year federal prison term in Florida after pleading guilty to the leaks and being sentenced in January of last year. Now, the IRS didn't provide a reason for this huge leap from the original number to the actual number that was affected, but said it had mailed letters informing the victims. Relying on data analysts by the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration and the IRS mailed notifications to 405,427 taxpayers whose taxpayer information was inappropriately disclosed by Mr. Littlejohn. Approximately 89% of the taxpayers are business entities. So, again, this was an IRS contractor. So really, is the problem Musk getting in there and looking at the IRS, or is it the people that were working behind the scenes that we have to fear? Now, moving away from Doge, though we can continue to still talk about Doge. I see a lot of comments coming in. I know we're moving along on so many topics this morning. But there is going to be some growing pains. Maybe that's a term that we're looking for. There are going to be some things that we know the media are going to latch on. We warned about this going early on, really early on, that the media is going to try to control the narrative, that there's always chaos, that this is bad. I just don't know how you sell reform in the IRS, reform in the federal government, how you try to present that as bad. Listen, they can always take out of 10,000 stories, you might find one that's bad, and you're going to focus on that if you're the media. But that's another reason why we've talked about the media losing their credibility. As a matter of fact, Sean Hannity from Fox News gave an interview, kind of a rare interview the other day, saying that exact statement, that the mainstream, the legacy media is dead because they've lost all credibility. We talked about it yesterday on the program, and we talk about it almost every day when it comes to the media. But when you had 4 years of not having any conversation about Joe Biden's mental health, and then you want to tell us now after that this president needs more scrutiny and we need to focus laser-like on every little issue, it's hard to take them at their word. And of course, that's why they have lost their credibility. We do have a couple media updates that we're going to get to a little bit later on. Not too much on that this morning, but the Trump administration is making a very interesting move on that I think is encouraging. We'll talk about that. Also, we do have a few things here. I know I'm running a little bit late, but we do have a few things here just about his cabinet and some opinion pieces about what he's been doing thus far. A few things here about J.D. Vance, and then just some quick run-through catch-up issues that we want to get to as well. So, and I do have, I've got an announcement when we come back. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio on Market Street in Corning. I missed a couple. We got so many comments coming in. I missed a couple. We'll try. I'm hoping I'm getting to all of them. I apologize if I miss anybody's, and we'll read some more in the next segment as well. Ken writes in, did you see the report that Senator Whitehouse pushed and voted for spending bills that included millions of dollars for the environmental organizations that his wife was the president of? Apparently, she took various forms of compensation from the nonprofit, totaling over $2.5 million since 2010. I would bet this isn't an isolated case. It's probably more of the norm. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why, what did they say with Doge, that heads exploded all over Washington? Because this is not the way things are done normally. So, yeah, I think he raised a good point. Just to give people a little more information, Whitehouse's wife, Sandra, is employed as president of a consulting firm. Consulting firms very often raise red flags. But it was called Ocean Wonks LLC, and has been since 2017. She has been the president since 2017. Before that, she was a direct employee of Ocean Conservancy, serving as a senior policy advisor beginning in 2008. Okay, getting a little wonky here. Ocean Conservancy has received more than $14.2 million in federal grants since 2008. During 2024 alone, it was given two sizable grants, one for $5.2 million from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, for marine debris cleanup in September, and another for $1.7 million from the EPA. The former was funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, championed by the Biden administration and voted for by none other than Senator Whitehouse. The latter was funded through the EPA's annual appropriations bill, which Whitehouse also voted for. So, since 2010, Ocean Conservancy has paid Whitehouse a total of $2,686,800, either directly through her firm per tax documents. So $2.7, essentially, million. Thank you for bringing that to our attention, Ken. Ken also writes, Elon, if you're watching Frankly Speaking again today, please contact me through Frank. I'll be more than glad to let you know what I did last week. And if you need my social security number, I'll be more than happy to give it to you. Thanks, Ken. Just knowing I just don't understand why that was such a controversy. But I think that highlights what we've been talking about all morning with the nameless, faceless bureaucrats, because it seems to me the people that push back on giving your supervisor a list of what you did the week before, just 5 things, not the whole day or the whole week, just 5 things you did all week. I think the people that either refused to send them or didn't want to send them, I think there's only 2 reasons. One, that person may not even work for the government, may not check their email, but they're getting that check. That could be one of them. That's some of the people that are weeding out. Or the other option is it is the people that are going to fight back in this administration. It's a bureaucrat that is going to say, I'm not going to do what my boss tells me, what the president tells me, because I know better than the taxpayer. I know better than Trump. I could run this country better, and I don't have to run. So I'm going to do it from behind the scenes. I think that's who this created, quote, chaos for. The people that either didn't want to tell them because maybe, whoa, a bird just hit the window. Maybe they didn't want to tell the Musk or anybody what they did because they may not have any accomplishments last week. Those are the ones just collecting the paycheck. Or it's the ones that do want to fight back and be a fly in the ointment for the changes that Doge is trying to make because they are bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, and they want to keep the quote-unquote gravy train going, all while, and remember, it's not me saying this, Politico told those exact type of employees that were going to be obstructionists, if you will, for the Trump administration, told them to make sure behind the scenes that they try to disrupt Trump's agenda, try to do everything they can to stop that agenda. So what Trump and Doge are saying, okay, that's what you want Politico, and they're not calling out Politico directly, but that's what you want them to do, then why don't we change exactly how things have been done? They should not have that type of power or responsibility, and that isn't their power or responsibility, but they shouldn't be able to take that up by themselves. So that's who I think the majority, because they said, what, 1 million people responded, and that's just under half of who they were looking to, which is crazy, what they were looking for to respond. Okay. So again, those people that didn't respond either had no accomplishments or look as if they are better than their supervisors, no more than the man elected to be president of the United States. Okay, comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Oh, yeah, I got to read this one later because it kind of got jumbled up. But I do want to say to you, Scott, good morning as well, and thank you. I'm glad that you enjoy the show. But my translator thing on Google kind of messed up here, so I'm missing some of your points. But I know, like many of us, our governor, we believe and we know our governor does not have our best interest at heart, whether it's the bail reform or whether it's in the prisons, the HALT Act, which is kind of the prison version of bail reform, always tying the hands of law enforcement and coddling the criminals, putting our safety at jeopardy. That's why Lee Zeldin did so well, and ultimately not winning, but did so well in the governor's race, and probably why Mike Lawler is nipping at her heels in a poll, even though he hasn't declared that he's going to run, because she's shown that she doesn't care about the safety of the residents, of the taxpayers of New York State. She doesn't care about the business climate with the climate change super fund. So the list goes on. And I think Democrats and Republicans should look to what she has done and see if she has our best interest at heart. But thank you, Scott. I'm sorry if I didn't paraphrase that right. Just was an issue with the Google this morning. Comment from a different viewer. That idiot that has the nerve to say that all the CEOs would not do what President Trump and Elon are doing when they are the two of the smartest CEOs in the world. To that person, to that senator, I can't remember his name. Was it senator or representative? You know where you can put your opinions. You know what's interesting about that? It's like when AOC, right? Was it AOC? It was so laughable that Musk isn't even that smart of a billionaire. He's not. I've met a lot smarter billionaires. They're like, and to that viewer's point, you're telling Elon Musk, the world's richest man, you're telling Trump, who has put his business accomplishments aside, who has now become president of the United States twice, that they don't know how to streamline, they don't know how to run an organization, is quite laughable. And it goes to show you how they're in their bubble. And let's face it, whether it's media or whether it's politicians, very much ego-driven and surrounded by yes people. So they believe that when they walk in the room, they're the smartest person in that room. So when AOC said that Musk isn't even that smart of a billionaire, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's very similar to what she said, or this guy saying, don't ask CEOs, they wouldn't do it this way. Well, I'm guessing they're not CEOs to the level then of Tesla and what Musk has accomplished with SpaceX, etc. Comment from a different viewer. Private business would try to get the most amount of production with the least amount of labor. Government does not understand or like this idea. You're exactly right, and that's why they hate these cuts. But that's exactly what Doge is trying to accomplish. Just like it were a private business saying, we want to get the most production with the least amount of labor, with the least amount of employees and the least amount of cost, and in this case, cost to the taxpayers. But I kind of like what the press secretary said, though I'm paraphrasing, I'm kind of adding to it. I think if you're in the government, and this is almost an impossible task, a Herculean task, but if you're not at least putting in half the effort that Trump is every day, which even that might be too much, maybe we should look for somebody else. Now, she didn't say that, but I'm saying that. It's kind of the read between the lines scenario. Now, no, I don't know what his email would look like if Trump had to do a review of his week last week. It would be quite a lengthy document. But again, I think there are just a lot of people that didn't want to respond to that email because either they don't actually work and they're just collecting a paycheck, or they were going to be a part of the problem in enacting President Trump's agenda. All right, we got to take another break. I got so many comments coming. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Which break is this? Yeah, okay. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm getting lost in the moment because we're having so much fun. We'll be right back. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Still getting waves coming in. Thank you, everyone. Let's go to some viewer comments. Good morning. Well, good morning. My question is, will we ever get any of the money back? Well, that's a fair question. So there's two lines of thinking. We heard Trump and Musk suggest that there would be a Doge dividend that you would receive as a taxpayer around $5,000, depending if they reach their goal of how much they want to cut. But what Trump suggested was 20% of what they saved would go to the taxpayers and 20% paying down the deficit. Now, then there's the other side that goes, just put it towards our debt. Don't give us the checks. Just completely start paying down the debt. So there's that line of thinking too. So I don't have an answer for you. I don't know if there will be a check ever sent to you, but I think as a country, we will be getting the money back. Okay. Mark says, I'd like to be a mouse in the Capitol building, seeing the Democrats have fits over what the new team is doing. It must be hectic. You're right, Mark. It must be hectic. I think the Democrats, this is a comment from a different viewer, I think the Democrats reveal how they really think by reading into what the Trump team is doing from the view of what motivates themselves by putting an evil twist to the team's agenda. Yes, they do put an evil twist on everything, and that was kind of a definition of the first term as well. They tried to read into what he's thinking. A comment from a different viewer. Thank you for sending this to my attention, but we mentioned it in the 6 o'clock hour. Representative Langworthy had his Jamestown office vandalized, and since that person wrote in, I'm assuming that that means that some have missed what his statement on the scenario is. So here we go. And this is a very appropriate time to bring this up again, because we talk about the anger. We talk about the threats that are being made. We talk about the Democrat Party actually telling Hakeem Jeffries he's not going far enough, and the Democrats have to fight Trump even more. Here's what Congressman Langworthy had to say. Last week, an act of vandalism was committed at my Jamestown office designed to jam the door and make it impossible for us to enter our office space. At the time of the incident, it was public knowledge that I was off-site holding a press conference, and the office would be empty. We immediately notified local law enforcement who are conducting an investigation. This disturbing incident comes on the heels of an envelope with white powder that was recently sent to another one of my district offices. Let me be clear, these actions are crimes and have no place in our political discourse. It is completely unacceptable for my hardworking staff and the citizens who rely on our office for federal assistance to be disrupted by the criminal activity of deranged zealots. It will not be tolerated, and I will urge prosecution to the fullest extent of the law. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. We did mention it in the 6 o'clock hour, but I'm glad that we could reiterate it. Comment from a different viewer. 5 things I did last week was laid around watching TV in my pajamas, made coffee, yelled at the kids to be quiet as I continue to watch TV, called a friend of mine to shoot the breeze, and then got something to eat. Not a bad day. Not a bad day at all. I'm not sure if you're trying to speak to that of a bureaucrat, or if you're trying to, or maybe that was just your schedule. Okay. Are you hiring? Trying to get back to the comment section. All right, there we go. The Trump administration has launched a mandatory online registry of illegal immigrants with names, fingerprints, and home addresses. As early as this week, it would force undocumented migrants to submit personal information or face fines and arrests. The mandatory registry would require illegal immigrants, including minors over the age of 14, to submit fingerprints and home addresses, according to U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services. Migrants who fail to register could be fined as much as $5,000 and be sentenced to up to 6 months in prison. Quote, aliens in this country illegally face a choice. They can return home and follow the legal process to come to the United States, or they can deal with the consequences of continuing to violate our laws. This coming from Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Under the current rules, migrants in the country illegally are committing a civil offense rather than a criminal one, but could still be detained and deported. The registry aims to get illegal immigrants who haven't had interaction with the government, such as by seeking asylum or a work permit, on the Department of Homeland Security's radar. Illegal migrants will have 30 days to submit their personal information once the registration website is up and running. Quote, once an alien has registered and appeared for fingerprinting, unless waived, DHS will issue evidence of registration, which aliens over the age of 18 must carry and keep in their possession at all times. Read a notice on the U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services website. Quote, it is the legal obligation of all unregistered aliens or previously registered children who turn 14 years old in the United States to comply with these requirements. Failure to comply will result in criminal and civil penalties, up to and including misdemeanor prosecution and the payment of fines. Okay. Some more comments, some more waves coming in. Keep those comments and waves coming in. We're wrapping up. I've got kind of a story to piggyback off that with. Boy, we still have a lot to get to. Stay with us. Show's going quick this morning, isn't it? Thank you for joining us. One quick thing, because I do have just 30 seconds, and I promised I would mention this earlier and forgot. There has been an announcement made by Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, and you may recall that there was the Donate Life Student Art Contest. There has been an extension on how long you have to submit. It will now be by March 10th. So you now have until March 10th to prepare your piece of art. If you know a student that this would apply to, you can contact at the bottom of the screen and get the ball rolling. Entries must be submitted by a teacher or parent and must include the participating student's name, grade level, age, address, phone number, and email. But I want to give you that update that the date has changed on that. They just announced it yesterday that it has been extended now till March 10th before you have to submit. That is the new deadline. All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Stay with us. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. There's a comment that we received from a viewer, and it was a voicemail. And this morning, voicemails do not seem to be, for lack of a better word, translating great. I can't listen to them while we're on the air. Just to explain, give you a little behind the scenes here. I can't listen to them when they're on the air or broadcast over the air, and I'm not positive of what anybody's going to say, so I can't do that. But what it'll do is kind of like a Google Translate and type up everything that you said. This morning it has not been very accurate. So I understand there is someone that sent me a voicemail, is not happy with Trump and Musk and the firing of the federal employees because of what it'll do for their family. I don't want you to think I'm avoiding reading your comment. What I'm going to do is I will listen to it after the program, and I will read it on tomorrow's program. But the kind of the crux of the argument, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that these people have families, and that how can someone support the firing of these people with families? How many families has it affected? I hope I'm paraphrasing that, but I'll do a better job when I can actually hear your statement. But I didn't want you to think I'm avoiding a statement that is negative towards Trump or Musk. Okay, Trump says that the United States will sell $5 million gold cards to foreigners. It's Green Card Privileges Plus, according to the New York Post. President Trump announced that the U.S. government will soon begin selling $5 million gold cards that convey both green card residency status and a path to American citizenship to foreigners, predicting 1 million cards will be sold and saying the initiative could quickly pay down the national debt. Quote, it's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication. It's a road to citizenship for people, and essentially people of wealth or people of great talent. We're going to be putting a price on the card of about $5 million, and that's going to give you a Green Card Privileges Plus. They'll be wealthy, they'll be successful, and they'll be spending a lot of money and paying a lot of taxes and employing a lot of people. Trump claimed that the initiative had been approved by administration lawyers and will launch in roughly 2 weeks. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said the program would be a more successful version of the EB-5 visa initiative established by legislation in 1990, which granted certain investors a green card if they met criteria goals. Rather than having this sort of ridiculous EB-5 program, we're going to end the EB-5 program. We're going to replace it with a Trump Gold Card, which is really a green card. They'll be able to pay $5 million to the U.S. government And they'll have to go through vetting, of course, to make sure they're wonderful, world-class global citizens. Trump said he believes everyone from Russian oligarchs to Indian tech entrepreneurs would pay for the cards. Apple and all these companies that want to get people to be working for them will be able to buy a card. And for the people that are number one in their class at top schools, I see that as one of the things. But generally speaking, it will be people with money and people that create jobs. And they won't have to pay any tax on income outside of the United States, which they're not paying right now. They're not citizens. But they'll have to pay if they create jobs in the United States. They'll pay full taxes like everybody else. He predicted we'll be able to sell maybe 1 million of these cards, maybe more than that. And if you add up the numbers, they're pretty good. As an example, 1 million cards would be worth $5 trillion. And if you sell 10 million of these cards, it's a total of $50 trillion. Well, we have $35 trillion in debt. That'd be nice. So we'll see. All right. Now, I said I would mention the media, and the media's outraged over this. But Carolyn Leavitt has announced that the White House Correspondents Association will no longer determine the press pool. The media is pushing back against this. And they were doing so very quickly. The White House Correspondents Association has long been accused of bias, of a left-leaning agenda. They are the ones that hold the White House Correspondents' Dinner. But they also work behind the scenes in this way, and some of the employees have worked for various Democratic administrations, or I believe one of the members of the White House Correspondents Association was going to work for MSNBC soon. Well, they announced yesterday, that its press team will determine which media members are in the White House press pool rather than the White House Correspondents Association. Karen Leavitt said, as you all know, for decades, a group of D.C.-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. She emphasized that well-deserving outlets who have previously been denied access would be given the opportunity to join the pool, while legacy media outlets will still have access. Quote, as part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the president's remarks are heard far and wide around the world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. Leavitt emphasized that outlets would be added to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in the experience but are committed to covering this White House beat. The move comes after Leavitt announced a seat in the briefing room, which was traditionally reserved for White House staff, would be opened up to new media. How many did they say they ended up getting? How many requests for that seat? It was thousands upon thousands for the new media. Because presidents often hold events in smaller settings like the Oval Office, where not every reporter who covers the president can fit, the pool format has long been used to ensure that journalists accurately record a president's comments. The reporters who witness the event distribute a series of pool reports to a wider group of journalists, including hundreds of news outlets that cover his daily activities and remarks. The pool is most often made up of journalists from organizations like CNN, Reuters, the Associated Press, ABC News, Fox News, and the New York Times. But now there will be new media involved. Now, the White House Correspondents Association said it had been given no warning of this announcement and that there had been no prior discussion about it. The White House Correspondents Association will never stop advocating for comprehensive access, full transparency, and the right of the American people or the American public to read, listen to, and watch reports from the White House delivered without fear or favor. Well, there you are. You decide whether or not there is fear or favor. Hey, we got to take our last break, wrap up today's edition, get those last second comments in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up today's edition of the program. Ken writes in, Donald Trump sent me 5 bullet points of things he did last week. Work to save taxpayer money and reduce the national debt. Work to get more hostages released by Hamas. Work to end the war in Ukraine. Work to secure a partnership with Ukraine on mineral rights so America can recoup some of the money spent to help their war effort. Sign more executive orders to reverse the damage done by Biden's handlers during the last 4 years. I could go on, but I understand that Frankly Speaking is only 2 hours long. Yes, that email to explain what he accomplished in a week would be tremendous. The New York Post. Okay, now we gotta go quick. The New York Post editorial board says one thing Rachel Maddow can do to prove she's not racist like her MSNBC bosses, and I think you can assume what that one thing is that they're suggesting. Quit. Put your money where your mouth is. By the way, DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard moves to terminate and revoke security clearances of NSA employees who have been tied to an explicit chat room. There are over 100 people from across the intelligence community that contributed to and participated in what is really just an erroneous violation of trust. What to speak of, like basic rules and standards around professionalism. What else do we got? Yes, Ukraine and the U.S. did agree on minerals deal as Zelensky plans his visit on Friday. Trump saying of the military aid, we want to get that money back. So that'll be a close one to watch. A great opinion piece at the New York Post this morning. War on democracy. J.D. Vance was right to rip into Europe's muzzling the voice of the people. It's about Martin Gurry. If you get a chance, an opportunity to read it. I know we've talked a little bit about J.D. Vance's speech recently. All right, here's a big story right as we head out the door. Representative Byron Donalds has announced he'll be running for Florida governor. Time to now take the mantle, he has said. Now, this is going to be an interesting showdown because Ron DeSantis' wife is in talks of running. Ron DeSantis is term limited out. Now, Donalds, who was born and raised in Brooklyn, made the announcement during an interview with Sean Hannity. Sean, we have a wonderful state. I got to Florida when I was 17 years old off of a Greyhound bus with just a trunk of clothes. And over the rest of my life of my time in Florida, I built a family, I built a career. I was able to serve 4 years in the state legislature, 4 years in Congress, and I think now is a time to take the mantle and lead our state into the future. Now, we know he is heavily supported by Trump. I know Byron well, have seen him tested at the highest and most difficult levels, and he is a total winner. So Byron Donalds has announced, there was a lot of speculation that he would, his run for governor of Florida. Okay, we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thank you for all the great comments, all the great waves. I hope that you'll join us tomorrow morning, starting at 6 a.m., and really every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it already. Have a great day, everyone.